Welcome to Cityscope, a podcast where we go in depth about a City of Salina service, project, or initiative. And today I'm with Corey Scheck, who's the Chief Technology Officer for the city. Corey, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, David.
In the time that I've been working here at the city, we've never talked about the computer technology department, mainly because it's not forward-facing. There's no services that the department offers to the public, but the department really provides vital services to the city.
That's true. We do kind of play in the background quite a bit. We do provide services for most of what citizens take advantage of. So we support the system and platform for water billing, for example. So if you have water service, then you're indirectly capitalizing on that infrastructure that we have built up and support. Public safety is another area. Both fire division and the police division are supported by our department, and that's a 24/7, 365 endeavor. Right. So there's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes that most folks don't realize are actually there.
Right. And we have to commend the staff of the department because they're just running around day after day, troubleshooting items, fixing things. It's a tough job because one day they're fixing a printer, the other day they're doing something much more technical.
Yeah, that's the challenge with IT is you never know waking up from one day to the next what you're actually going to have to work on. And it's a delicate balance of prioritization too. We have a great help desk team. We've got great technicians and great administrators that are really good about prioritizing the important stuff first. But you're absolutely right. One morning we may be working on a catastrophe, and the next morning we may be working on implementing something brand new that we've never used. So
Right. And one of the things that consumes a lot of your time is cybersecurity. Now,
yes.
Obviously, we're not going to go into the details of what the city's doing to protect its assets, but that's something that you're working on pretty much all the time now.
It's an organic piece to IT. You're never done with cybersecurity, and that is because of the ever-evolving threat landscape in the world today. Early 2000s, late 90s, there were some threats out there, but they were big, but they were, I don't want to say obvious, but they weren't as widespreading as the stuff we see today. Now it's to the point where just visiting a website can cause you to accidentally install malware that can really not just compromise your system. Those days are kind of falling by the wayside. Now it's the data. So they exfiltrate data, and the scary part is you really don't know what they have until you interact with them in some cases. So that takes a lot of systems and a lot of monitoring to make sure that we aren't seeing large amounts of data leave our network without us knowing. And the systems that do that, they're pretty sophisticated, but nothing is automated. You always have to have that human element. So yes, it's 100% a full-time monitoring job. And just in the last 2 years, the city has made some transitions in our structure in IT to accommodate for that. So we've recently added a security analyst position, and we are hoping in 2026 to be able to fulfill a security administrator role that will do all of that analyzation of all of those systems that monitor and report on potential malicious activity.
Right. And we've seen here in the past couple of years breaches in other cities like Wichita, which was pretty major, and it's literally taken them months, if not years, to recover from that.
Yeah, that's the reality of recovery is extremely daunting. And I commend Wichita. They've done a spectacular job with what they've been dealt.
Right.
So, but that's absolutely it. Sometimes recovery isn't possible. And that's really where we focus on. Let's look at, before we even talk about how to recover from those, let's look at what we're doing. How are we handling the data? Where are we saving it? What are we saving? And is it really mission critical to keep it? There's a systemic problem, I think, across the world where a lot of agencies, especially in the municipal sector, want to keep everything just in case. And that's good practice to ensure that you have what you need, but it's really bad practice for regards to that data is available for someone to come and get.
Right.
You know, and if you're not needing it and you're not using it day to day, then our rule is let's get rid of it, because that's just one more pain point sitting out there to potentially be compromised. With the threat landscape, what it is, we're really kind of almost living in this society where your best bet is just freeze your credit.
Right,
I mean,
right.
because healthcare providers are getting compromised, data is getting exfiltrated from so many places outside of municipal environments that my motto is they've got your information. Someone does somewhere.
Right.
And the best prevention, you know, even as a citizen, it's free to do, is to go out to all three of those credit bureaus and do what's called a freeze. And that basically prevents anybody from running a credit line on your ID or social, that information. You can go and unfreeze it in a matter of minutes. If you're, say, I'm going to go buy a car, you go and unfreeze it for one day, and then it goes right back into a frozen status. And that's really the best prevention. The secondary benefit is when you do that, you can set it up to receive notifications when people attempt to. So then at least you have some, I would want to say peace of mind, but you at least know, you have some resolution that, okay, yeah, something is out there. Now I do want to keep this kind of locked down.
Right, right. And kind of a plug for the county, they have the subscription service where if someone or if there's a record entered in your name at the Register of Deeds or something like that, then you'll be notified about that. So if that's not something that's authorized by you, then you'll be able to know right away.
Yeah, that's a great feature. The downside is that when you build those features, they're a lot to manage to keep them working. But in a perfect world, that'd be anything, in my opinion, where you can impact somebody's financial status or their personal status should have more monitoring and more notifications.
Right.
It's just really hard to enforce that on private sector.
Sure.
But we're starting to see some state and federal statutes come around to a reasonable level where they're saying, hey, now we require you to notify. And I think that's good. More work for us. Right. But at the same time, it's where we need to be. Our overall goal, not our overall goal, our secondary goal in IT, and it sits right next to number one, is we are responsible for protecting all of that data.
Right, right. Yeah, we have an obligation to do that.
Exactly. So my protection and our monitoring and our awareness doesn't stop at just our infrastructure. It extends out because those citizens have put information into, say, our water billing. That's our responsibility to protect. So we take every effort to ensure that we've got strict security policies, we've got strict data policies, and our monitoring systems are always up to date.
Okay, yeah, good to know. So we've talked about a credit freeze for private citizens. What are some other things that private citizens can do to improve their cybersecurity at home?
So there's a lot of pay solutions out there. The credit freeze is a great option because it's free. It doesn't cost you anything to do. However, there are a lot of programs such as LifeLock is probably one that gets the most television time,
right,
if you want to say that. There are paid solutions that you can engage in, but they are just a monitoring solution. So I think they're great. Not everybody can afford a subscription to some of these solutions, though. And in those cases, it really is a challenge. You almost have to visit every agency that you do business with at that level to see if there are any notification and or restrictions. And another thing that's never a bad idea, when you engage with a company on that level where you're giving them that sensitive information, there's really two categories. There's PII, which is personally identifiable information, and then there's SPII, which is sensitive personally identifiable information. And the difference really is knowing a little bit about someone and taking over their identity. So for example, a social security number, that is sensitive. Right. So anytime you're dealing with those types of sensitive PII with a vendor, ask them what their policy is on handling that data. Flat out, what's your process with my social security number? Is it being stored in a database? Are you entering it into a cloud system and then losing it essentially? Is it being kept on a paper file in your office? I'm not sure if there's a requirement for them to respond, but in most cases, they will come forward with how they manage your data.
Well,
and that's your right to know.
Right. And most companies, I think, are obligated by law to send something out on an annual basis that states how they use your personal information and who they share it with. So I know it's not always the most exciting reading.
Right.
And if you open it up and see it, you might be tempted to just throw it out. But it's worth reading to know how they use that information.
Absolutely. And the other thing to keep in mind, too, just to kind of prevent the mass hysteria or the fear, because while it's a significant issue, it's not something that folks should necessarily be worried about day in, day out. It's part of life. It's part of the culture now. But what I would recommend is take into consideration your net worth. And that should help you kind of appropriately assess how much time you should invest in protecting because that changes the size of the target to bad actors.
Sure.
I do a lot of individual small business discussions, and that's always the question is, oh, well, what if I get hacked? What if I think someone might be, and there's a lot of unconfirmed facts. And in those situations, the best thing to ask is, what would the appeal be? What is the draw? If I'm an individual with, a total liquid of, $20,000 in the bank, chances are that's not a big target for some of these big actors to invest time in compromising. So that can kind of subdue some of those concerns initially is, it's absolutely a fishing game to them.
Right.
And if they're in a pond with small fish, chances are they're going to pack up the boat and move on.
Yeah. Not that you're totally out of the woods on
Correct.
that, but.
Correct. Everyone should take protecting their personally identifiable information seriously. And that's not just a social security number.
Right.
Bad actors have a tendency to kind of reverse engineer their way into someone's identity. So they start picking up open record information, for example, phone numbers, addresses, first name, last name, even previous residents where they've lived. That information can be found easily.
Right.
Well, they'll build the portfolio and then they're ready. So when they get that one key piece of SPII, it's a matter of minutes for them to actually start inflicting damage. Again, that's kind of a rare case. You don't see that too much anymore, but it absolutely still happens. Absolutely.
Yeah. And a lot of the phishing emails that you see are designed to get you to reveal that SPII to them.
Absolutely. The scary part with emails is how you can embed code
Right.
that's not visible.
Yeah.
And that's why we, in our cyber training, we stress the importance of two pieces. Actually, I'll say three. Two of them are loosely connected to each other, but really three pieces. And those pieces are, do you know who the email is coming from? Do you trust that person? And is that link something that you're expecting? So if you answer no to any of those questions, I always encourage people, pick the phone up and call them. A lot of times you'll say, no, I didn't send you anything. But those are three quick questions, even in public email environments, that you can ask yourself. Because just in the Gmail environment, I think there's some misnomers that, oh, well, it's in Gmail's world. I can't possibly be infected because that's on their server. And that's true, but not true. Because you, as a user, when you're interacting with that mailbox, you can absolutely trigger some of that hidden code by clicking on the wrong thing. And that's where people will tend to get into some trouble. So always kind of ask yourself, am I expecting this? Do I know this person? And do I trust this person? And if you answer no to any of those, just pick up the phone and call them and say, did you send this to me?
Right. Something that is always concerning to me is AI. And how do you see the use of AI kind of contributing to all of this?
It's a double-edged sword.
Right.
And really the best tactic to address AI from the bad actor's perspective is to fight it with AI. And we're starting to make a lot of those transitions now. We have put a couple of systems in recently that leverage AI for analyzation automatically before it takes the time to notify us, which takes a lot of the management overhead out of monitoring these systems. So it very much is a a tug of war between AI, but I can say if you don't have systems, logging systems that are capable of processing those logs, it can be hard to keep up.
Right.
It can be very difficult. My concern is that those systems are so expensive. A lot of times they're very unpractical for very small municipalities to do. But they have the same statutory requirements that we do as a municipality.
Right.
So I've kind of been trying to challenge a lot of vendors to step up to the plate and make these a little more economical, a little more affordable, these higher end systems for that small and mid-sized business environment. Because that's the only, you fight fire with fire.
Right.
That's the most effective thing to do. Not the only way, but it certainly is the most effective.
Right.
Productivity-wise, AI is a great thing. We've started using a lot of private, and when I say private, so everyone's familiar with ChatGPT.
Right.
The general synopsis of how that works is anything you type into it goes into the back end to provide more information to the LLM, the learning machine behind the AI. With a private generative AI solution, that does not feed into a public LLM. So that data is not out there publicly available to be potentially compromised and used against you. So we leverage a private AI solution in the organization, so we have the ability to use it, say, carefree, essentially. We also have an out to where we can certainly reach out to them and say, go ahead, let's purge all of the threads. Let's delete everything that you guys have in our private LLM and start over. I strongly encourage that for any private sector or municipal as opposed to the ChatGPT, because those all are driven on the back end by the same main system.
Right.
And it might seem harmless to upload a spreadsheet, but if that spreadsheet has 50 social security numbers in it, you've just fed those into a system that many other AI solutions have access to leverage the data out of. So it's kind of a scary scenario. I can't think of any instances where something bad has come from that yet. But that's the exact reason we kind of entered into a contract with a private AI company, so that we don't have to concern ourselves with the back end having access to things that we didn't intend for them to have access to. The other beautiful part of our solution that we have so much confidence in is there is a risk analysis portal in there. So we can set policies to look for those formats, and it can notify us if a user, because there's historical documents that are hundreds of pages long that you could never go through manually. AI is great at summarizing and analyzing that. But if you don't know what's in it, you could involuntarily upload a whole set of sensitive PII. Well, the data security piece behind the private AI prevents that, redacts it, and it notifies admin. So we can have a conversation with them and dig deeper into that document. Those don't exist in the ChatGPT world, so you really kind of are walking on a thin line if you're doing it for sensitive things. So we love the private AI solution that we have. I get a lot of benefit out of that just from summarizing and analyzing. And you take that benefit and kind of unfold that to the security side, and that's the same benefit you get when you start employing those AI-based monitoring tools.
Right.
Is it's real-time, live analyzation. Stuff that would take minutes and sometimes even hours for a person to do manually.
Right. Right.
So,
Well, it's a big job to be vigilant about all those things all the time, and I'm glad we have you and others in the department who are managing that for us. So thanks for doing that.
yep, absolutely. That's why I like what I do. That's my goal, is to make sure that everything is safe. Everybody is indirectly protected, from identity theft and things like that,
Right.
and just keep things moving forward, keep systems running.
Yeah.
It's a challenge every day, but it's a fun challenge to me.
Oh, good. Good.
So,
Kind of taking a left-hand turn here, left hand this way. We've made it a lot easier for people to fill out forms online and that kind of thing. Can you just kind of briefly walk us through that?
sure. We've engaged in some enterprise form solutions. And a great example of this is what Development Services has done in GovBuilt with their permitting process. I personally got to take advantage of that portal for the first time from a citizen's perspective, and it was amazing. It was simple, and those types of form collection systems we're trying to move into. So those citizen-facing forms, we want them to be in a system like GovBuilt or like Laserfish Enterprise, where that's cataloged. It can automatically go into a workflow if it's a sensitive issue to notify the proper people, generate tickets in that paper trail. And forms for a long time were kind of whatever was convenient at that particular moment in time. So we had a brief stint with an old product called Omniform, then we go to Adobe, then we went to, and that's just the evolution. Well, the city has decided, let's look at these enterprise solutions that aren't going anywhere to do this, instead of constantly churning to the next best thing in 5 to 8 years. And it's a very cost-effective approach because it gives all departments in the city the same accessibility to build those same public-facing forms as they need for their individual departments' processes.
Right.
So it's been exciting. It's a challenge to get all of those forms modernized. You don't realize how much goes into the processing of fields from one field
I'm
to
realizing
another.
it because I'm involved in that.
Right,
So.
but it is a challenge. Sometimes it's a fun challenge, though, to take something that's very archaic and then turn it into a dynamic form that has 2 questions, and it just evolves as you answer the questions.
Right,
Which is the direction we want to go.
Yeah.
We want a dynamic, organic form that almost has a one-way conversation with the user, not a wall of check boxes and blanks that need to be filled out.
Yeah.
Those can be pretty daunting.
There's a lot of advantages to it. I mean, not only is it more efficient on our end, but it's efficient for citizens because now they don't have to come down to the city building to fill out the form that they need. They can do it from home. As you said, based on your answers, it'll show different parts of the form so that you can fill those out appropriately. And then even in some of the forms, there's two-way communication there. So if you need to check on the status of it, you can just send a message and we'll be able to send a message back to you. So there's just so many advantages and make it so much easier for the citizens to interact with the government.
Absolutely, and that's critical to me. You hear it all the time. We're moving at the pace of government because it does take a long time. There's a lot of checks and there's a lot of authorizations that need to happen a lot of times, and it's important for the public to understand the reason that it sometimes does take government so long is because we are making sure that paper trail is defined, safe. We save only what we need, and that we also have all the information that we need to in order to engage with you. One thing that I'm hoping to hit the ground sometime here in this calendar year still is we are looking to create a public-facing forum for potential cyber-related concerns. So if a individual were to be on a city-sanctioned website and they see something that they think, I don't think that should be there, they will have a way to report that to the IT department, and then we can investigate to see if there was really an issue there or not. We don't have a very effective reporting process now at all. So I can't even speak to whether or not those situations are occurring because there's just no metric. A good example of those steps is when we get audited for security. So we'll have to provide reports with authorization for certain actions that we take as a municipal government. And that's what those forms really do for us, is they pad out that checks and balances system so that we know we're not missing getting the okay from this person for that piece that they directly manage. So it's really, there's so many benefits to optimized and organic forms and dynamic forms that I don't even think we've started realizing all of the benefits yet.
Right, yeah. We're still very much in learning mode in a lot of respects. So what else is coming up in the computer technology department?
We are, I'm trying to think, we are currently working on an intranet page that will modernize our internal communication inside the city to create kind of a centralized repository for those dynamic forms, as well as information about IT in general. We try to educate our staff as much as we can. And I feel like the intranet, which is a private website, just to clarify, intranet would be
Right.
your public. Intranet is internal and private. So only city employees can reach that resource. But our hope is to be able to bridge that gap between our cybersecurity education that we do mandatorily every quarter and just general knowledge, so that they have a portal to go and look at new things. We may be able to put notices in kind of a news alert fashion if there's an issue. And that could be beneficial for these large world data breaches. You know, there was a healthcare database that was recently exfiltrated. Doesn't relate to us directly, but we sure could put a notice out there saying, hey, this just for our citizens, hey,
Yeah.
this was noted. If you do business with them, you might want to reach out with this link. So those are on the horizon. They're still very much in an infant development stage, but that's our hope, is to be able to bridge some of that cybersecurity awareness and reporting in a more robust manner, not just to internal staff initially, but also to the citizens.
Okay. All right. Well, there's just so many things going on in the computer technology department that citizens just aren't aware of, because it's not something that they take advantage of. You
Right.
know, it helps provide such vital services to the city. So we're really grateful for the work of all the staff in the department. So.
Yep, we work at, I think we're good in our certain skill sets.
Right.
The other thing that we hope to kind of maybe start dipping our toe into just out of necessity is we've heard the term IoT, which stands for Internet of Things.
Yes.
So there's so many things now that use network that can be compromised.
Right. Could be a garage door opener. It could be a coffee machine. It could be a toaster, et cetera.
HVAC controller,
Right.
Thermostat on the wall. I mean, all of these things can be compromised. And folks might think, well, what's the harm in compromising an HVAC? So a scenario, if you have a facility with hardwood floors in it, and you're on vacation and they crank that humidity up, that can warp your floors. Silly thing, but the point of bad actors is to create problems.
Right.
Ultimately, they want that data, but they're not all out for the same goal. Some, what's the phrase? Some folks just like to watch the world burn.
Sure.
And those bad actors do exist. But in our world, the IoT is a hugely daunting environment, because those are not things that in most IT departments have ever had to manage. So we're kind of starting to step into that a little bit at a time. We're working with, we're kind of engaging with our utilities departments, who are working with those utility vendors to make sure that they are providing us attestations and security documentation, so we can ensure that they're doing their part. Because there is a balance. While we collect and we manage a lot of that data, some of that data does have to go through a third-party vendor.
Right.
So that's our obligation as well, is to make sure that vendor is doing what they say they're doing, and not just handing us a piece of paper that checks all the boxes.
Right.
So that world of IoT is going to be, it's going to be a great thing once we get it under wraps, but wrapping our arms around that is going to take us some time.
Right.
But that's absolutely a goal.
Right. Okay. Well, Corey, thanks for being on the show. It's really been an education here.
Sure.
And I hope that citizens can take advantage of some of the information that we presented here today, and strengthen their own cybersecurity at home. So.
Absolutely, yes, and hopefully we can get some of those public-facing portals available, and have a way for the citizens to report some suspicious things when they see them.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's been great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for watching Cityscope. We'll see you next month.